All Departments is sponsored by the White Bear Micro Pub on Southbourne Grove, the perfect pre- and post-game venue to chat about the game and only a 25-minute walk to the ground, or there's a bus stop right outside. Wear your AFCB shirt on any match day and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the cherries, here come the cherries, here come the cherries, number one.
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our always mighty Cherries lost 2-0 to Arsenal for the second time this season at the weekend, but remain 5 points clear of the relegation zone. Here to run the rule over a sobering Sunday lunchtime is author of the Southend website, Steve Jenkins. Steve, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. Now, yesterday I went along to Dean Court hoping that we'd improve upon our result at the Emirates in December, but it didn't really work out that way, did it?
No, I think before the game I was quite excited and I'm thinking, well, maybe, just maybe we're going to get something out of the game. But, yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, Steve, all right?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you took me by surprise a bit there. I was watching the Super Bowl highlights. Sorry, no, it's okay, that doesn't matter. That's no problem. I was just dawdling on the internet.
Yes.
But not
time
all.
like we all do.
Yeah, exactly. How are you, all right?
Yeah, I'm very well. How are you?
Good, man. Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Just ruminating over our prospects. When we win a game, it seems like that's it, we're going to be fine. And then when we lose one, you start looking at the fixtures rather nervously, don't you?
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, we're on 28 points, aren't we? And I can't see us not getting enough points, but that's like every time you lose, there's more points gone, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's it's going to be a nervous time until we get across the line. Let's hope it's sooner rather than later. Anyway, we'll get to it, and then you won't be up too late talking to me. All right, there we go. You ready?
Yep, ready.
Good man. Steve, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. Now, yesterday I went along to Dean Court hoping that we'd improve upon our result at the Emirates in December, but it didn't really work out that way, did it?
No, I think before the game I was quite excited and I'm thinking, well, maybe, just maybe we're going to get something out of the game. But, yeah, as you said, it didn't really quite work out as expected.
Now, the team was unchanged from the 11 that beat Crystal Palace in midweek. Eddie brought Junior Stanislas back in for Murray. Still no Elphick on the bench, and still no Royce Wiggins either. And in a kind of bizarre way, I was somewhat looking forward to Wiggins being on the bench and seeing what the reaction would be if he came out to warm up, which he obviously would have done had he been on the bench. But I think Eddie's only going to use him when he's ready. Maybe he's not fit as he should be or something. But that's something to look forward to as a kind of sideshow, perhaps later in the season, or maybe in the cup match against Everton. You never know. But anyway, it was no change really from Crystal Palace. Great result midweek, and we probably started off quite evenly with Arsenal. I mean, you could see straight away that they are a team to be reckoned with. Although we weren't overrun in, say, the initial 10 to 15 minutes, it was normally it's us overrunning the opposition in that period of the game. But you could immediately see, as if we didn't already know, that Arsenal were not going to be a team that was going to fall for our usual fast start, were they?
No, I think yeah, they're sort of a team. They're a classy team, aren't they? And you knew the fact is that, you know, if even with our fast start, I still think we would have struggled to contain them very much. And you know, we did all right, but like I said, but I just think, I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it yesterday. It just looked like in the first half especially, it just never really happened at all. I mean, we never got to grips with them. We're sort of like, yeah, you know, in Super, as soon as they start to step up a gear maybe and then got into the flow of their game a little bit, I thought we struggled quite badly to keep up with them.
Yeah, you look at their 11 that started the game, and the eye is drawn to the forward line. Sanchez, Giroud, Oxlade-Chamberlain to a certain extent, and you tend to, well, I certainly did, overlook Flamini, and we'll come on to his tackle in a minute, and Ramsey, but they really got a stranglehold on the midfield despite us having 3 across the centre of midfield, and I think that was what in many ways helped them to dominate, especially the first half. They were just a class above us. I mean, Ramsey's a player that probably doesn't hit the headlines, but Wenger plays him week in, week out, and I was really impressed with him yesterday. And Flamini as well, definitely isn't one of their leading lights, but he also did a really decent job. But he was involved in the first, as I mentioned, real talking point of the game, which was his tackle on Dan Gosling. What did you think about that? Did you think it was red?
Oh, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I at the time, I didn't really see it very well when it happened from where I was sat, and I couldn't really tell. And so I was just only guessing by the reaction of the players, and then he came out a yellow card, and I guess it was all right. And then I saw it on TV last night, the highlights of it, and I'm still undecided because I think he got the ball first. But I mean, I still think it's a reckless tackle. So could have gone either way. I would have probably given him a yellow because I'm a bit soft like that. But it could have been a red with another referee, and we'll get onto the referee later on, I expect, because I didn't think much of him.
The 2-footed feet in the air challenge is outlawed, and so by the letter of the law, it's a red card. What saved him, as you said, was he got a lot more of the ball than he did of Dan Gosling. I think if he'd have got a bit more of Gosling, then he would have been off. And I too went with the reaction of the players because I was quite a long way from the incident. I also think perhaps to a lesser extent, and I'm now trying to read the referee's mind, was that it was the point at which it happened in the game. If it had been 10 minutes from the end, he might have sent him off, but it was only 10 minutes into the game. So he perhaps had a little bit of a buffer against the referee being quite as keen to pull out the red card. I mean, he didn't send him off, but that would have been a real bonus for us in terms of going up against 10 men for 80 minutes. But it didn't happen, and they were pretty much in control from that point onwards for the rest of the second half. But we didn't collapse in the way that I'd feared against, think back to Tottenham at home, Man City away. We did concede a couple of goals. We'll come on to those in a moment. But we kind of continued to hold our own, despite we definitely weren't playing our best. In fact, we were struggling to get out of our own half. They began to cut us open a bit more, though. And at one point, I don't know if you remember this tackle, Ozil went through on goal, and Steve Cook looked through a tackle that the whole world looked like he was going to give away a penalty, and it was a perfectly timed tackle, wasn't it?
Yeah, like you say, that was at the other end from where I was at. I couldn't see that one properly, but when I saw it back on the highlights that I seen, and it was. And I think that guy was reading the Guardian report today, and that even got a mention in the report how good a tackle that was, because otherwise, that would have been somebody else might be going off instead of Mr. Flamini.
Yeah, I mean, Cook didn't have his greatest day yesterday, but that was a very classy bit of tackling and in an extremely dangerous position, and he's thrown those more than once this season. It hasn't always worked out. I remember the one against Leicester when he brought Vardy down. And he didn't have his greatest game against Norwich either. But anyway, he did really, really well there. And then they had another chance on the 14th minute. And I had a good view of this one. It was Sanchez when he kind of volleyed over with his left foot. And I was sort of chatting about the game with the guy in front of me, Rob, and we were saying there was too many, like a couple of Arsenal players, Sanchez and somebody else, free on the Arsenal left-hand side. And no sooner had we been discussing it than the ball came to Sanchez from Ramsey, and he was kind of free in the box. The ball bounced, and he then volleyed it on the half volley over the top. It bounced between Francis and Giroud. I actually thought he was going to score. And I think it was only the fact it was on his left foot that saved us, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so, because we're from my side, like he just took a wild shot at it, but he's a bit too classy to take a wild shot at it, but it went quite a long way past the goal, didn't it? So, yeah, I think perhaps it was his left foot, it just wasn't on his... He didn't seem to play that well, I don't think. He was okay for the whole match, but I don't think he's fully fit yet, is he? And he doesn't look quite as good as he was before he got injured.
No, Smith was marshalling him quite well, and we've seen Daniels deal with some players you think, they're going to make mincemeat of our defence this season. The ones that spring to mind are Delafeu and Willian when we played Chelsea and Everton. But yesterday it was, Smith was probably the one that stuck out in terms of dealing with a big name player and being able to handle him. And he didn't have a huge impact on the game. Like you say, he's only just come back. He didn't play against us up there in London. I was pleased. Didn't make any difference to the scoreline anyway. Either way, but he wasn't quite at the top of his game yesterday. But unfortunately, some of their other players were. And then I guess it was becoming more inevitable that they were going to make the breakthrough, and they did on the 23rd minute. Ramsey again pulling the strings, and he was given a bit too much space in the midfield and chipped the ball into Giroud, who headed it down, even though Sanchez was kind of almost getting in his way, and it dropped straight to Ozil in space, and it was an easy finish. The thing I noticed about that goal when I watched it back was those three players I mentioned, Ramsey, Giroud and Ozil, if anybody gets the chance to watch the goal back, at each moment when just before they receive the ball, they just managed to find half a yard of space by just pulling off the rest of the play, and then it just gives them that little bit of time to do what they need to do. I don't know if you noticed that.
Well, I noticed when Ozil was playing, when he kept coming up the wing, and he was getting quite a lot of space because he, like you say, he makes his space, but then he was getting the space, and when he did, I noticed every time he came up to the south end where I was sat, he was coming, and he never seemed to have anybody within at least 2 foot of him, and that gave him enough time to make some more space to put a cross in, and every time he was putting a decent ball in.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, actually. I hadn't thought of it until you were talking just then, that there was more than one occasion, probably 5 or 6 times yesterday, I did find myself shouting when Ozil got the ball, "Don't give him any room." That's exactly what was happening. He was somehow finding the space, and he was just in the right place for the goal. He just pulled off the defence, and then, Boris had no chance. Boris did almost get a hand to it, but he just rifled it in from close range, and there was no way he was going to keep that one out, was there?
He'd have to be stood literally in front of that, wouldn't he, to have had any chance of saving it and taking it right in the face. But it was a good finish. Yeah,
and their tails were up then immediately, as you would expect after a goal, and we were rocking somewhat and looked vulnerable. And I remember thinking, possibly even saying, let's just ride this out and steady the ship. But we weren't able to do that yesterday, were we?
Well, it's unfortunately not, no, because I was thinking, 1-0's not so bad, is it? We're not playing brilliantly, they're not playing brilliantly, and just willing them to get into the action a little bit more, and before he even basically got over the last goal, then there was another one, wasn't there? And that was to say that was another good finish. Yeah, that was like a pinpoint finish right into the top, far corner, wasn't it? Or far corner, and he was never ever, I don't think, ever going to save that, was he? I don't think. But there you go. Just a really good finish.
Yeah, it was an excellent finish. I thought it was actually a much better finish than Ozil's. Ozil was in the right place at the right time, but basically just had to whack it as hard as he could into a bit of a gap between Cook and I think Francis, and yeah, it was either going to hit one of them or Boris, or it was going to go in. Much more likely to go in, but Oxlade-Chamberlain had a lot more to do because he received the ball again from Ramsey. Because what actually happened was Cook made a mistake, and he's admitted as much since the game. The ball ran through to him from Sanchez. I think the ball was past to Sanchez, but he didn't quite make it, or he had a poor first touch. Cook was backpedaling, and he tried to. Well, he said in the subsequent interview that he tried to control it, but he himself had a poor first touch, a very poor one, because it ran quite a long way away from him. I suppose the other thing he could have done was booted it up the pitch, which he probably wished he had now. And in a flash, Ramsey had it. Oxlade-Chamberlain was sprinting away from Arta, and he had one touch, took him into the box. And I think the accuracy of the shot was very impressive, as was the way that he got the shot off, and nobody really expected it. It's kind of like one of those things that shows when we talk about the class of player that you see in the Premier League. I mean, there's been times this season when I've kind of thought, well, maybe that isn't such a big gulf as I'd previously thought when some of the players that we've played against and I've seen over the years on the TV and that, and thought they must be fantastic, and haven't really impressed me that much. But yeah, Oxlade-Chamberlain's finish yesterday certainly seemed to be in that higher echelon of what
early, didn't he? So he took it early, and he just put it in. Well, it could only be in one spot really to go in the goal, and that's where he put it.
And when goals like that are scored and they come off the post, which it did before it went in, and if you're near enough, which I was not that far away from it, because it's the away team, you can hear the ball hit the post. When it's the home team, the crowd are already up cheering, even whether it goes in or not by then. And it hit the post, and what seemed like a much longer amount of time passed in my head than did in reality before I was thinking, well, that's hit the post. Let's hope that bounces out. It bounced into the goal, and it was 2-0. Yeah, I mean, a brilliant finish. I definitely don't think Boris could have done anything about it. And but all of a sudden it was 2-0.
Well, yeah. So it was 88 seconds, I read.
Yeah.
So and that's it. And once you're 2-0 down against Arsenal, I couldn't ever see us really ever getting back into get anything out of the match. I could see us scoring a goal, but I couldn't see us. I would have struggled to see us get a draw out of the game, I think.
Just getting back to Cook, praised him earlier for his tackle on Ozil, which was a great tackle, perfectly timed. He held his hands up and took the blame for the second goal yesterday, or certainly for the mistake that led to the second goal. Later in the game, he nearly made a mistake. It was quite late in the game that nearly led to he did make a mistake that nearly led to the third goal when he swung at the ball, and I think Ramsey then nipped in, but he shot from the angle and Boris saved. Tommy Elphick's back in the picture. He wasn't on the bench yesterday. Do you think Cook's place could be under threat?
I don't know, do you? Because obviously the way that Eddie Howe's lined up that back four now, because Adam Smith's obviously playing well, hasn't he? And so he's moved Francis into the centre. So I'd be struggling to see where Tommy Elphick. Well, I guess the only replacement would be Steve Cook, a natural replacement. But then, right, Steve Cook didn't have his greatest game yesterday, but I still think generally throughout the season he's played really, really well. And, and you can't, so if you're going to keep him in the side, you're going to struggle. Who else are you going to drop? You're going to put Francis back out on the left, or right, wherever he plays, can't remember. Anyway, and then drop Smith, and then put Elphick and Cook back in the middle again. it's going to be a really difficult decision, isn't it? And I'd be surprised if he drops Cook, but then I'd be surprised if he dropped anybody in the back four, because I think they've all been playing really, really well.
He trusts them. He trusts Cook, and he's played him consistently over the past few years. It's a surprise when he's not playing, to be honest. And he's got Distan as well. I kind of forgot about him when I was talking about Elphick. But yeah, I would also be surprised if he dropped him at this stage. And all players, and you're perhaps more exposed at the back than you are, in other parts of the pitch, well, apart from the goalkeeper, obviously, particularly against a team playing, of the calibre of Arsenal. And so your mistakes are going to be punished, which that mistake may not have been punished against perhaps a team further down the table, and it just shows up, and he wasn't punished for the second one. But I can't see Eddie thinking, well, he made a couple of errors, he's out of the team against Stoke, when he's done, everything to convince Eddie to play him week in, week
season
out.
He's been playing well, and he's been, and he can't, you can't be dropping him, can you, for two mistakes against one of the best teams in the league, who might even be, Premier League champions. It'd be very, very cruel, I would say, and I don't think he deserves to be dropped, because I think at times this season he's probably been, not every game, but like quite a lot of times, I think he's been the best defender on the pitch. But I'm not saying that. So it's Charlie Daniels, Simon Francis, and Adam Smith. So I think they're all very good, and I think I thought at the beginning of the season Cook made a few mistakes and he might get dropped. But he seems to have grown into the league quite quickly, and he seems to be doing really well.
Yeah, I think Eddie. I'd be amazed unless he's injured if he doesn't start against Stoke. And I think you need to have more than one mistake-riddled game, and it was only a couple of mistakes really for Eddie to drop players that he's trusted over the years. Anyway, after that, like we said, and everybody knows, two very quick goals in short order. They were 2-0 up, and at that point I did start to fear for us and think this is going to be, or this could be, a big scoreline, 4-5-0 or whatever. And it was only halfway through the first half, but I was already willing half time to come. But we didn't fall apart then. Unfortunately, we did after the first goal and quickly conceded the second. And we began to push a bit more into their half. There's always the argument that, well, they took their foot off the gas a bit, having gone 2-0 up. They probably were confident that they could wrap the game up if they needed to. But we dug in a bit, and there was a couple of, well, I won't call them near misses, but
I think you're being very generous.
Well, there was Harry Arter's shot from distance. He kind of,
didn't it?
Yeah, he burst through. I mean, that was a zinger, and Czech's a good goalkeeper, and he's had a lot of plaudits this season. But I mean, that was a fine effort, wasn't it?
It was a very good effort, yeah. And then and it's even better when I watched it back on the TV and then see how close he was and how Czech managed just to get his fingertips to it to probably, I don't know, diverted past the goal. I don't know if it would have gone in anyway.
Yeah, I tried to have a closer look on the replay that they showed the camera from the side of the goal, and I think it was on target, but it was kind of just above Czech. So although I probably wouldn't have saved it, for a goalie of his calibre, it was kind of in a nice part of the goal. I think maybe if it had been a bit more to either side, he might have struggled. And left foot, that was from Harry. I still can't work out whether he's left or right footed, but I think that's probably a good thing, and one of the many assets that he has that keeps him in the team and keeps him doing so well. And then Harry Arter played what I always refer to as the Callum Wilson ball up to Mark Pugh, who latched onto it, got away from Gabriel Paulista, but as I was watching it live, he appeared to dally on the ball, and then I wanted him to get the shot off faster, and their defence nipped in. But he was actually offside, wasn't he?
Yeah, I couldn't tell from where I was sat whether he was offside or not, but I think the chance was gone anyway, wasn't he? Because he wasn't quite quick enough, and and you're still playing another very good. They're quite good defensively, so your chances are very, very slim, aren't they? And you've got to take them almost immediately to have any chance of scoring, and he didn't quite manage it.
Yeah, the thing I noticed with their defence was the pace. Like Bellerin, I thought he was very quick.
I think I've seen anyone any quicker, ever. But I couldn't believe how quick he was.
And a
few yards head start, and he'd still catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark Pugh, he said in the week that he's had to develop other aspects of his game because his pace isn't the quickest. And he in some ways, and that was of a benefit to him yesterday because nobody was going to be as quick as them on our team. So at least he had a couple of his usual tricks to try and pull something off. But it wasn't to be. He was offside anyway. And then there was another one which I kind of overlooked at the time, but having seen it back, realised it was a better chance than I thought when Andrew Sermon released Adam Smith. He kind of played a diagonal ball to him, and Smith was in on goal from a tight angle, and he shot, and it was too much of an angle, and Cech was able to get to it. The thing I didn't notice at the time was Benica Fobe was very well placed in the middle of the goal. Obviously, he was playing against his old club. He never actually made an appearance, but he was there from something like the age of 6 to the age of 20 or something. And he in the first half, he was really isolated, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was obvious that he needed to get the ball, and at no point did he really. I don't think he got. I can't remember any decent balls to him to give him half a chance, really. And unfortunately, didn't happen. Yeah, because the only way he's going to score is if he gets the ball, isn't he? And he didn't really get it at all.
No, Eddie was mildly critical of our neglect of the balls that he needed in the first half, and he saw a bit more of the ball in the second half. One thing I noticed he did do in the second half that he didn't do in the first half himself was he came deeper to get the ball, and I'm hoping that will become more of a feature of his game going forward. I guess it's all about learning what Eddie wants, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's done pretty well so far, and how long has he been here? 5 games?
5 games, 3 goals.
Yeah, so you can't complain too much, can you? And I think he looks like a very, very, very good prospect, and I think he's an ideal replacement for Callum Wilson. Obviously, he's not quite as good, but I don't think give him a few more games, 10 games in for the rest of the season, and I'm sure he's still going to score a lot more goals. And when the rest of the team get to know his game, and hopefully, not like yesterday, they will give him more of the ball that he needs to score goals.
Yeah, I think he's got the potential to score, perhaps get into double figures for us this season, even if it was just 8 goals, maybe. I mean, it'd go a long way to keeping us up. And yeah, he's been a good signing, and we saw a lot more of him in the second half yesterday, and hopefully be adding to his goal tally soon. And then half time came along, and I don't know about you, but as I alluded to earlier, I was actually quite relieved when the half time whistle went. It was only 2-0.
Well, I always thought Arsenal, they didn't really. They got the 2 goals in front, and they sort of like you might have said, they might have taken their foot off the pedal. But I don't think they really took their foot off the pedal as much. But I suppose they weren't quite as urgent because they were 2 goals in front, weren't they? And they just thinking, well, we'll just kick the ball around a bit and we'll get to half time and then see what happens. And I was quite glad to see half time anyway, because I wanted to get us in and get Eddie to give him a bit of a kick up the arse and get it right for the second half.
This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear, your local micropub on Southbourne Grove, where you can't watch the game, but you can definitely talk about it. Head to the White Bear on any AFCB match day wearing your team shirt and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk. So, into the second half, I think we started off, in fact, throughout the half, we were much brighter. We certainly put in a more confident performance and competed with Arsenal more. Although that said, one thing I noticed about them, and I've noticed about a couple of the top teams this season, is that when they get into tight situations, and there's a few players around the ball, the skill of those types of players almost always sees them emerge with the ball, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite ridiculous, isn't it? Sometimes you're thinking, how are they going to get out of that? Oh, well, there you go. And there he is running off up the pitch and running away. And you just, God knows, it must be like, as an actual player, when you sat there or stood next to him and you got your eye on the ball and you're trying to get the ball off of them, and then they somehow come up with some fancy footwork and they're gone, and you're thinking, how did that happen?
I think some teams have one player like that. The one I'm thinking of is Dimitri Payet at West Ham. But a team like Arsenal seem to have 4 or 5, and then all the other players in the team are also like really good players as well. And that was one of the differences I saw between the teams yesterday. But anyway, we certainly didn't do our reputation any harm in the second half. We had a few chances. There was one that I very briefly thought had actually gone in the goal. This was a chance that Adam Smith had. Gosling, there was a little move between Gosling and Ritchie, and Gosling putting a little disguised pass. I don't think anybody was expecting it. I'm not even sure Smith was expecting it. He looked a little surprised, but he reacted quite well, and he kind of flicked the ball up. And when it hit the side netting, when that happens, obviously the net moves, the net ripples, and depending on where you are in the ground, it looks like it's in, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was at the other end, so I didn't have a clue, but I was thinking, yeah, that looks all right. And a few people getting excited, but you just have to sit there and wait, don't you, until wherever end it is, all jump up, and then that is a goal. And then obviously nobody did, so I took the guess that it didn't go in, even though it looked like it might have done. Yeah,
that would have perhaps asked Arsenal a few more questions. And although I did say I thought they were perhaps not in top gear once they got the 2 goals, you get one back at home, get the crowd behind you, there's a bit of the game left, it can make all the difference, but it didn't happen. And then Eddie, well, it was in the 66th minute, he made a double substitution. He took off Dan Gosling and Matt Ritchie and put on the fit again, Junior Stanislas, and Josh King, who's been making his way back into the team recently. What did you think of Ritchie's performance yesterday?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. I think it wasn't his best game either. I mean, he wasn't the only one who, everyone didn't have a great game, but yeah, it was a little odd, wasn't it? His shooting was a bit off. It just seemed a bit, he just didn't have one of his better games, and he didn't contribute, and he didn't really seem to get forward as much and link up either, link up the play like he used to as well. Just didn't have the brightest of games, did he? And I think that's probably why he took him off, because he was quite ineffective, I thought, yesterday.
Yeah, he obviously starred for us last season, well, like many of the players in the Championship. He started off this season really brightly. He was kind of getting the headlines. He scored a couple of really good goals. He hasn't scored since. I think it's... I've been trying to think, what is it that has seen his form dip a little? I mean, he hasn't played badly. He just hasn't been hitting the heights that you might expect. Obviously, he's playing in a harder league, but then so are the other players, and he hasn't really shone. Well, certainly for a while. But I think unless he's carrying an injury, which I haven't heard anything about, the only other reason that I can identify that he's potentially not at the top of his game is that partnership with Simon Francis is so productive. It's just not the same with Smith, is it?
No, it's not. And I think in that, where it works so well with Francis, and it was working all right when they were both playing in their old positions, or shall we say his old position. But yes, because he's quite an attacking player as well, isn't he, Adams? Not a very defensive player, but he doesn't make the same sort of... He's always bombing forward, but never quite in the same way as Simon Francis, and perhaps they don't like each other.
Well, Francis, Smith, I was going to say, tends to cut inside a lot more than Simon Francis. Francis always, when he was playing at right back, always just seemed to bomb in a straight line down the touchline.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think, and that's not happening, is it? Like you say, Smith gets quite close to the, 18-yard box, and then he sort of cuts in, doesn't he? And quite often shoots across the goal. And, and it's not quite the same. So perhaps getting Tommy Elphick back in, you see, dropping Smith and putting Francis back out and getting that going again and see if that works.
I'm sure Eddie's thought of all these things. He don't need. I doubt he's sitting at home thinking, "Oh, I can't wait till the podcast is out, get a bit of tactical advice." But yeah, it's just interesting to think, what the reasons could be and what the solutions could be. But then I guess if you're a manager, you have to look at the best solution all round, as opposed to just in one particular part of the pitch or for one player. And Richie's a talented player anyway, and he keeps picking him, and I guess he's got other options. He brought Stanislas on yesterday. He's got Iturbe on the bench, and we're waiting for him to adapt to English football. Hopefully, we'll get to see the best of him at some point this season. But I think Richie, I think he'll potentially be on the bench against Stoke, and Stanislas might start. Although Pugh is also one who could swap in and out. I guess we've got some strength in those particular positions. So we'll wait and see. And I don't quite remember the order of events, but a little while later, 11 minutes later, in the 77th minute, Lewis Grabban came on for Benica Phobe. And then it was, I think, after that a couple of high early crosses were swung in from Junior Stanislas. Certainly one of them was from Junior Stanislas. And I remember thinking at the time, that's just the sort of delivery that a Phobe would thrive on. But he wasn't on the pitch, was he?
No. And exactly. And that's probably something, like you say, Eddie Howe said he wasn't getting in the first half, and that's the sort of thing that he needs. I know he's not just a header of the ball. He's quite pacey, and he's quite strong as well. But those sort of things, I guess, as a striker, is exactly what you want, isn't it? So you can give the defence a hard time.
And he brought King on, and King was playing a little more centrally. He failed to connect. Well, I think he did get a bit of his head to one of those crosses, but it wasn't the right part of his head, and it certainly wasn't hard enough in the right direction. I think Grabban may have overrun one or something as well. Just on the subject of Grabban, I always feel I'm trying to give him a little bit of love and understanding that he perhaps doesn't get from elsewhere, and he's constantly now being targeted with and this man cost £7 million thing, which isn't his fault, but it is not an accusation that's going to go away. Well, accusation is perhaps not the right word, but a fact that's not going to go away. He's not scored yet. He's not getting huge amounts of game time. Talked about the way the crosses came in, because the other person that came into my mind when those crosses were coming in, or when afterwards, when I thought about it, was Glenn Murray, who didn't even make the bench yesterday. I'm assuming that was a tactical as opposed to an injury thing. But I mean, do you think Grabban's doing enough to stay on the bench ahead of Murray at the moment?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you know what Eddie Howe likes in his teams. He likes somebody with some pace, doesn't he? And that's probably why King and Stanislas came on at some point. And I suppose the thing with Grabban is he didn't play a lot of games when he was at Norwich either, did he? So he's not had a lot of game time while he was not like he was playing there every week. So I guess if he was playing every week, they wouldn't have sold him, would they?
No, he had the 90 minutes against Portsmouth. That was I think he said on Twitter that was his first 90 minutes since last March, and obviously he didn't get 90 minutes yesterday.
No, and I think it shows, unfortunately. And he said, and I read something, and he says, "I'm not, he's match fit," but he goes, obviously he's not been playing, so he goes, he's not really up to his, the top of his game, which he probably will need to be, really, don't he? And the only way he's going to get that is if he plays him. But then why would you play him above Phobe, who's obviously already up to speed and doing really well? So I think he's going to struggle to get in the team, and I think he's probably not as good as Phobe anyway. And like I say, I don't really care how much they paid for him. Eddie Howe paid for him, didn't he? Well, he know what he wants, and he know why he bought him, because he knows he fits in with the team. And I guess he's quite pacey, and he will probably score some goals, I think, eventually. But I think it's going to take a long while for him to click into gear. And I don't, but Glenn Murray, as you mentioned, might be the other choice. It hasn't done very much either. Well, he has come on occasionally and nodded a few in, hasn't he, for us, important goals.
Mm.
I mean, he's another player that doesn't seem to be really fitting in with the team very well.
No, and I mean, there's always little, rumours, that's all they are, about how happy Murray is at the club, how happy Eddie is with him. He's now splashed out on Lewis Grabban, and I guess Murray could be on his way at the end of the season. It's possible, one season. He scored some goals. I mean, I guess if you just look at the goal against Chelsea and the 3 points that got us, and the boost it gave us going into the games that came after that, I mean, that's almost paid his transfer fee back in itself, considering how much money, is up for every team in the Premier League next year. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But
yeah, I heard some rumours about that. He's not one of the most hard-working of. These are only rumours from so and so who said so and so, but he's not one of those hard-working players that Bournemouth got, and I can imagine that they probably have to do they're expected to be work very, very hard, and probably at other clubs it's slightly different, isn't it? And it's a whole new environment that they probably don't get used to, and it just doesn't seem to be. Well, he doesn't seem to be wanted, probably like he was when he was at Crystal Palace. I don't know why, but
no, he was adored there, and they liked him at Brighton and Reading as well. It hasn't really happened here, and he has more than once himself said in interviews that the training's a lot different at Bournemouth, and it's taken him a while to get used to it. So that may well be linked to what you said about perhaps being somewhat taken aback by the amount of hard work that's required, and maybe he's struggled to adapt. Whereas we'd think with Lewis Grabban, at least he knows what he's going to be coming into. Although I definitely agree with you, he doesn't even look fit to me. When I look, and I saw another photo this week. I mentioned this in one of the recent podcasts. I saw a photo of him playing for us recently, and it might have even been from yesterday's game. And I just think you do not look in his face. He just doesn't look as fit and as finely sort of toned as he did when he was playing for us originally. He's a year or two older, but I think hopefully after a few weeks, maybe it might not even be till next season, a good pre-season, I don't think he might not be at the top of his fitness. And I still have a lot of good will towards Lewis Grabban, in contrast to a lot of Bournemouth fans, certainly ones I've noticed around me at Dean Court. I think maybe because I just like because of the goals he scored and the way he worked that season he played for us in the Championship, and I want him to do well. But then you never quite know, because sometimes they struggle for a while and it works out, like Junior Stanislas. So I think hopefully, as Eddie says, the best is yet to come from Lewis Grabban. Anyway, right at the end of the game, we had probably our best chances of the game. Harry Arter's zinger in the first half aside, we got a corner, and it swung across and fell to Steve Cook, and he hit it well on the half volley, but it was straight at Cech, and Cech was able to save, and then immediately the ball went out to Harry Arter, who struck it, I think, first time, whipped in a low shot, and Cech got to that one. That was actually a harder save. I'm starting to, lose a bit of, I wouldn't say affection, a bit of the admiration I had for Petr Cech, because he seems to be the when you look at those chances, the only thing between us and us competing a little more against Arsenal, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, unfortunately. He is very, very good, isn't he? And that's probably why Arsenal have got half a chance of winning the league. And, having a good goalkeeper probably, gives them extra points, doesn't it? And as he proved yesterday, well, it might have probably made no difference anyway. But, getting away and saying now we don't like him anymore.
Until we sign him in a couple of seasons. Petr Cech gone down in my estimation since yesterday. Although I don't think it was just his performance that saw him across the line in that game. And then I mentioned about the chance that Ramsey had when Cook swung at Czech's clearance and missed it. Well, he didn't actually miss it. He just about made contact with it, but it fell straight into Ramsey's path. But luckily, Ramsey had a bit to do, and Boris managed to get there. And Boris only had to make 2 saves that I can remember yesterday. There was that one from Ramsey, and there was one in the second half which was a header from a corner. I think it was Giroud, went straight at him, and then he had the 2 that he had to pick out of the net, which he couldn't do anything about those. And although you think, well, I certainly think, I think the general feeling is Arsenal were worthy winners yesterday. That the gap between the 2 teams, it's not like a chasm, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, yeah, I'd agree. I think Arsenal were the worthy winners yesterday. I think once they got in front, it wasn't easy, but I mean, they never looked really like losing control of the game. They were in the bag, yeah. But like you say, this is not. We're not. This is out of. Well, these are probable. Well, they are title contenders, aren't we? And this is like one of the best teams in the league. And I'd have to say, for all the teams that have come down, they look like one of the best teams, but they didn't look that far. Well, they didn't look miles ahead of us. I thought, I don't think, with a few extra players maybe and another year's experience in that same league, I think we were getting a lot closer to a lot more of the sort of teams that are up there, like West Ham and Stoke and I don't know, Everton. Perhaps we're not that good yet, but getting somewhere towards them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the gap between us and the top teams, while still wide, is not as wide as it was. You look at the top 4. Obviously, Arsenal, we lost both games. Tottenham, we lost against them, and City, we were badly beaten as well. That was quite a while ago, both of those. Leicester, of course, who are doing wonderful things. I'm probably like many other neutral fans in that respect, and we're not going to win the Premier League, so I think I'd quite like it if they did. We drew home and away with them, and away was with 10 men for a large part of the game, so that shouldn't be overlooked. So yeah, we're doing all right, and we lost yesterday, and it would have been nice to get something out of the game, but it's no disgrace. I just made a quick note of some of their players that didn't start the game yesterday or weren't even on the bench. Walcott, Cazorla, Wiltshire, Welbeck. The last 3 are injured or certainly not featuring in the squad at the moment. I mean, when you list those names off and think they weren't even in the team, and Walcott did make a very brief appearance, about 40 seconds or something at the end, it does show that although the gap in class between the 2 teams isn't huge, they have resources to call on in terms of playing staff that we, at the moment, can only dream about, really, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do. I mean, because those Arsenal fans who were very, very quiet, I must say, the least noisy away fans that I can remember. But they, again, we've got Ozil, but if you looked at how much did he cost, £42 million, and that's just one player in their whole team. And I don't know how much our team cost, but it didn't get anywhere near £42 million, did it? I would imagine it's probably about 15 million. So they've got one player that's probably worth, cost at least twice as much as our whole squad. So, when you've got that much money to spend, you should be buying some classy players.
Yeah, I think the total that we spent, or certainly this season, if you include Gradle and Mings in that, is probably miles more than the entire transfer spend in our history until this season. Probably significantly
it's just ridiculous how much money we have to spend, but comparatively with a lot of teams in the Premier League, it's still small, isn't it? Spending £9 million on whatever it was, £9 million on a striker is seen as just like you're not even buying much for that, are you, anymore? Even though I think we've got a very good deal.
Yeah, and it takes some getting used to us throwing the money around. It feels like we're throwing the money around, but it could see us across the line, so it'd be well worth it. The next game that we've got is against Stoke, and and they have gone from a team that were doing really well and looking really solid to recently they've had a bad run of form, and the potential for us to get points in that game is there. I guess if we want to stay up, which obviously we do, those are the games that we really need to be looking, well, especially at home, to win, and we need to improve upon our home record, don't we?
We do, definitely. And you just said, if we would have been playing Stoke, I don't know, 4 games ago, I would have been, because like you pointed out, they were doing all right, weren't they? And they were playing quite well, but they seemed to have gone of a bit of a, a downturn in their form. And mind you, Arsenal hadn't won for how many games had they? 4 games, but we'll forget about that bit. So they haven't been playing particularly well, and so hopefully, that is a game that now, I would have probably said before, I think I would have been surprised to get anything out of, but this, I think, at the very least, we should be getting a draw out of the game. So we need to be picking up, points everywhere, don't we? And this is one of the games I think we definitely need at least a point, hopefully 3.
Yeah, let's hope so. Their downturn in form has been the reason, or one of the reasons for it, has been identified not by me, by those in the media, as by the absence of Ryan Shawcross at the back for them. And apparently, I looked him up today to see if there was any chance he was going to play against us next weekend. There is a chance, although it doesn't sound by any means certain. He's got a problem with his back, and it said he could be fit, and Mark Hughes is sweating on the fitness of Shawcross going into the Bournemouth game. Hopefully he won't play. They've just signed a striker for 18 million, so more money being splashed around. In Beulah from Porto hasn't helped them so far, but let's hope he doesn't come into any form or open his account for them when they play us. But yeah, I mean, we've got a little run of fixtures coming up now. Stoke, I think Watford, we've got the cup against Everton, obviously there's no points for that, whatever happens. Southampton, we're all looking forward to that one, and some games, I think Swansea isn't too far off as well, that on paper, at least, they don't play on paper obviously, look like we should be picking up points. You never know where the points are going to come from. We had a bad run towards the start of the season against teams. I think we picked up 8 points in something like 8 or 9 games against teams that were mainly those that you would think, well, we need to be doing more against them. And then we picked up points against teams we didn't expect, like United and Chelsea and so forth. But now the squad is a bit stronger, and barring any more catastrophic injuries, you would hope that we could get a lot closer to safety after that little run of games, wouldn't you?
You'd think so. How many games have we got left? Is it 13 games?
13, yeah.
Yeah, and you think out of 13 games, you can, surely we're going to be able to pick up at least 3 wins, maybe 2 wins and 6 draws. I don't know, whatever it is you need. But because I remember when I looked at the fixture list, didn't it? I mean, we got coming up. I think, like you said, we got Stoke, which is something you should get. Watford away, their form's dropped off a little bit, hasn't it? So we'd hopefully, we should have beaten them at home, but hopefully we'll get something out of that away. Southampton, I don't know. But there's lots and lots of games that you're thinking, well, until we get to the end of March and into April. But up until then, there's a lot of games you're thinking you could get a win or at least a point out of every game. And then we're obviously off to Tottenham, who are looking very good. Man City at home, Aston Villa. Well, hopefully we'll get something out of that. We've got Liverpool and Chelsea as well, haven't we? So quite a tough run of games. So we want to be picking up points.
I think we need to be perhaps edging towards the mid-30s come the end of March, because we've got quite a tough run in. At least it looks like it. I mean, there's games, like you said, Aston Villa, even Liverpool at home, Everton, well, they've seemed to improve a little recently, but Everton away, West Brom at home. In that run, you think potential for points, and you never know, there could be surprise results. But yeah, I don't care. I don't think anyone cares where.
Nothing you can do about it anyway.
where the points come from, as long as they come from somewhere, and we get enough, and we stay in the division. I'd much rather be in the position we're in now than than the kind of position teams like Norwich and Sunderland are in. So fingers crossed it will all work out.
I think some of the other teams in the league have gone right off the boil. Like Norwich were looking quite good, and they've just had a really poor run of form, haven't they? Certain Aston Villa have obviously had a very poor run of form pretty much all season, and Sunderland are still picking up points, but they're not picking up any wins, are they? It's mainly you're getting a lot of draws. And Newcastle are a bit of an odd team. So one week they're going to win, next week they lose, don't they? And then they win again, and then they get a draw, then they lose. So you think there's a few, and like West Brom are not playing particularly great either, are they? And even Chelsea are only 2 points above us. We've got to play them at home yet. That might be helping. See without getting relegated. But I don't think that's going to happen. So
that'd be lovely. Well, even to finish, if we're within a few points then, but to finish above them, it'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? I think we could safely say if we finish above Chelsea, we'll stay up. So we'll wait and see. So we'll finish up in a minute, Steve. I just wanted to mention the website, and we've obviously been in the Premier League now for over 6 months. Have you noticed any change in the attention that the Southend's getting?
Yes, I get a lot more emails now. Obviously, people have obviously looked at me and just found me probably through Google, I guess, and you're saying, "Can you talk to us?" I got a couple of people I get on quite well at Crystal Palace, and there's a few other people, some Everton supporters. So I get a lot more people showing interest and asking me to answer questions. At the beginning of the season, I got quite a lot of interest from just all sorts of outlets, like the newspapers and other websites, just loads of footballing websites. And I still get it now as well. Not quite as much as obviously when the season started, but every time there's a game coming along, I quite often get someone just asking me, do I want to answer some questions on AFC Bournemouth and stuff. So yeah, it's been quite interesting, getting a lot more. And and now I'm talking to somebody who's probably been supporting a team that's been in the Premier League for 25 years or longer. So it's quite weird, but it's nice to be noted.
Well, I was just about to say, I'm just glad that we had the opportunity to get to know you before you were famous, Steve.
Yeah, right.
All right, mate. Well, thanks ever so much for coming on the show. Always good to hear your thoughts about the Cherries. Keep up the good work with the website, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon.
Yes, thanks very much for having me.
Thanks again to Steve for coming on all departments. And if you haven't visited the Southend lately, it's well worth some of your time. Another home game against Stoke to look forward to at the weekend. So fingers crossed we will emerge from that one with a pot full of points. So up the Cherries in all departments, and goodbye. This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear Micropub in Southbourne-on-Sea. No loud music, no TVs, and no ringtones. Just good ale, good conversation, and good times. Just like a pub used to be. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.